This is the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt. In this podcast, we're going to discuss growing companies, automation and manufacturing,
and how we're building the lives and businesses we want to see in the world.
How's general feelings of the week here, Michael?
Good. I'm up in Mammoth right now, taking a couple days, working half days, which is nice.
Okay. Where's Mammoth?
It's like to the east of San Francisco.
Okay.
So it's like a 4 to 6 hour drive, depending on the time from LA. But big snow resort, kind of like Tahoe.
Okay. So you snowboarding then?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. In the mornings for like an hour or two.
Okay. Who's all with you?
Just Priscilla.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Good getaway.
But general work feelings, I'm pretty stoked. I've kind of been really on everybody to make sure things are moving forward. Trying to reorganize our systems. I'm really excited about sales. Since moving on from our sales guy, our sales have literally doubled.
Interesting.
Which has now put us in a weird scenario where from underperforming, I think the last few months, cash is kind of tight, but then at the same time, we're definitely now understaffed as well to actually be able to get all of the work finished. So there's definitely a background stress.
Yeah, is that so that increase in sales though, is that going to be a sustainable increase, or is that because you went out and grabbed all the low-hanging fruit of those leads that were not being captured, that should have been probably captured over the last, say, 1 to 6 months, and you just baked them all into this last 30 days, let's say?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we should move it into the sales if we're going to follow the the process.
We can bring that back there. I guess for me, general feelings of the week, a little overwhelmed, been on the road, so now just trying to get caught back up. So I was on the trade show bandwagon, if you will, Monday through Wednesday, back in the office today, and now just kind of hitting it rolling. And then I'm looking at next week and I'm back on the road following up on sales leads and doing site visits. So it's just one of those where it's like, all right, I got to cruise through a lot of stuff, get paperwork done, and make sure stuff doesn't fall behind, but all doable.
Yeah.
Just like one of those, like, I just can't slack.
Yeah. What show was it again?
It was
I know you mentioned
ProMat.
this.
Yeah. I guess we can roll right into sales and marketing from that.
It
was ProMat trade show. We had a lot of really good leads. I think we're going to probably come back with about like 60 to 75 4 to 5 star leads. I was just opening that up prior to this call, so that's why I was a couple minutes late. I was a little distracted there.
No worries.
But overall, pretty good show. We've never done that one before. We've done Automate and Pack Expo. Jury's kind of still out on which one's the best one.
Yeah, and ProMat's more like material handling warehouse, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's very much focused on that, which what we were seeing then is more towards our MRS product line was working out well because people wanting to case pack and palletize. More material handling, like you said, is really what it was focused on, which was a nice pace from like the Automate, which is, a lot of very much custom machines, and then Pack Expo is kind of like packaging and palletize like ProMat. So it's kind of a nice theme.
Yeah. Are you looking to move more into the MRS direction, or to continue pushing really custom, bigger builds?
We definitely want more of the product stuff. Something that we can talk more about on improvements or things that we've been seeing, just, I guess it is more sales, is we got very heavy on custom. So we have been, we used to be a more T&M based industrial product development company, which cash flow, and that's very easy. It's not capital intensive. You get into industrial machine building, and it's not uncommon to have $200,000 to $500,000 in materials tied up into a machine. And most customers are wanting you to carry that. And so then if you have a bunch of these machines running in parallel, you have delays on timelines, you have suppliers that miss stuff, you end up getting squeezed in the middle. And that's, they're great projects, but there's only so many a small growing business can sustain. So we used to be 80% T&M and 20% of these machine builds. And then over the last couple of years, we flipped the script on that, which then creates a fun cash flow challenge, if you will, which is at a, current size is fine, but it's just not sustainable to continue to grow year after year on just the machine side. Some of that's been changing the terms that we're just willing to give our customers now that we have credibility too. So that's also been changing our sales processes. How do we finance that for our customers, if you will? A big air quotes on that. How much are we carrying throughout it?
Yeah, the funny thing is that time and materials transitioned with good margins. We even for a long time went farther than that and put, most of our consulting customers were on retainer.
Mhm.
And mentioned that 80/20, we used to be 80/20 T&M to, projects and products. We've also flipped that, and I'm feeling that same cash issue, mostly because when we do, a turnkey, or we're moving a little bit away from this on the bigger projects, but we've typically been, capturing, a 50% deposit upfront, which, on these projects that are typically around 40% margin, we just collect that last 50% before,
Yeah.
install or shipment. So we've been pushing that number on the deposit up a little bit, but, at the same time, I hate to create any friction whatsoever that gets in the way of a closed deal.
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly it. Is, cash flow or movement is better if you can get your line of credits or stuff like that, giving you that cushion, but then you gotta bake those costs in because line of credits aren't free. I mean, interest rates are higher
right.
than, we've seen in our lives.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that is an interesting challenge that we're seeing on flipping that script. And so that's changing some of our sales and marketing. Yeah, we want to do more on the MRS back to that question. We're also just seeing a huge demand. You know, we build these machines that are say $500,000 to $2 million that are very robot intensive. And not everybody can afford that. And it kind of goes back to
Right.
the theme of all of our products that we create. It's how do we get products that, you know, are a portion of what we utilize in our machines in a fashion that makes it so other people can deploy automation or better engineering at a good pace. So that's what the MRS is. We're leveraging the software we've created into our machines, and then they can leverage that on a cost-effective platform under a couple $100,000.
Yeah. I think one thing that we're experiencing a little bit, I've been talking about trying to move up market, and we have been going after higher and higher end customers, which from a like actual, do the work perspective has been a dream. We're having customers who have, their own apps engineers. They'll buy a turnkey from us. They'll literally just like skip the training, just,
Perfect.
go through the PowerPoints, do it themselves. Maybe they have, 10, 15 minutes worth of questions. It's been a dream from that perspective. One thing that I'm a tad concerned with is, as we are moving up market and doing more jobs with the same customers, we're starting to get into more custom territory. And we still churn out, the $20,000 two-op turnkeys on relatively straightforward two-operation parts. But we're getting into these, $60,000 plus turnkeys where now, we're at a minimum, even on a semi-turnkey, we're tacking a PLC onto the side of the machine. We're dealing with different part thicknesses, serialization, different processes, 30 different kinds of code that might be running for, a given selection, input into the PLC. So I'm trying to be a little bit cautious there too, in that we're closing these bigger deals with better customers, but they're going a little more into the custom route.
Yeah, the custom's still good. I mean, it's just how you scope it. The key is to define that in the sales process, having learned that the hard way. But at the same
Yeah.
point, you have to go through some of those where you don't know what you don't know, so you just got to close the deal and go.
Yeah.
But once you've done a few of those, you learn very quickly on how you need to adjust, or
Right.
you're
Yeah.
not going to have a
When you
sustainable
screw
business.
yourself with negative margins, because
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
that's part of the game. I mean, actually, that's something I want to cover in number 6 at the end, a little something personal, something I've been asked a lot recently on, how'd you start develop? What was kind of that process? And it's like, man, you do a lot of stuff for free in the beginning. So we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, you do it. You get squeezed on some of those margins on those sales where you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And definitely when we were making that turnkey transition, really pushing the, the kind of half product, half service stuff in the automation business. There were probably 3 or 4 where we didn't really know what we were doing, and we got the job done and we got everything working properly and we got the customers to be happy. But I know we lost money on every single one.
But while you might have lost money on that, how did you apply that for growing your business? But might be the question to ask, because sometimes it's not all. I realize
Yeah.
businesses run on dollars. we don't run on hopes and dreams. I've said that to many clients that try and get me to do stuff that just is way out of whack. But it's you can't pay your bills and promises.
Yeah.
But like, what did you get out of that was tangible that you applied forward that now is monetary for Gimbal?
Well, I think the big thing for us was just the shift. So, the first thing, like when I started out with, the grippers and the automation products, I really thought, we were going to sell into shops that were kind of similar to us, and at that point it was like, okay, we're a 4 or 5 man shop. We want to automate these kind of small to mid-sized production runs. And, I thought, oh, we'll do that with grippers and a vise. And we got it working. And I assumed that those were the customers we would go after. And it turns out those customers weren't the people we wanted to go after at all. The people who actually wanted to adopt these systems were usually much larger companies. Really, I would say 25, but usually 50 employees is the minimum, like at a site where we'd want to install these. And, I think what I realized when we started to do these as turnkey installs, the first thing is, all the complications, all the quirks of, in-machine automation, customers just didn't have to deal with. So it was like guaranteed success. And the other thing I realized, after doing the first couple ones, is that we could actually charge enough money to make good margin on them.
Yeah.
And then we left with much happier customers because they didn't have to worry about succeeding the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were able to go copy and paste the hardware. Some of the customers will just buy it again and just, because they're going to make that one part for the machine life.
Sometimes you need that first one to gain the confidence on how you need to frame that and get them to actually pull the trigger on that more expensive solution.
Yeah. And I think one thing, at least I learned, Matt, like at least for me in our business is, I'm better at closing, I think, $20,000 to $100,000 sales than I am at closing lots of $1,000 and $2,000 sales.
I'm right there with you. The smaller, like if we have a VFS lead in the bucket or an email, I've had that happen in the past where it's like it takes me too long to respond, and those are the ones that need to be faster because they're typically wanting to buy now. But I'm seeing like the customer that had a question on like a $500,000 plus machine. It's like, I got to take care of this one because that's a lot of long-term revenue, but both need pretty equal attention in times of speed.
Yeah, the good news for us is like the questions are always the same and we can just document them.
For me, they're always, like the products are pretty similar, but
right.
The machines are always so wildly different.
So for us, even as we go up market, most of our stuff kind of caps out at 60 grand and is kind of runs itself. The machine, the CNC machines at the core. So we're able to kind of rely on Haas or Deanne or, whoever built the machine tool to kind of carry most of that load for us.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time when something goes wrong with the loading process, it's actually like, oh, your ATC is worn out, or, like something that's a machine tool issue and not a gimbal issue.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
More common than that is the customer messing with something they shouldn't be messing with.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
What else is new in sales and marketing for you? Big changes. So you've been taking up the sales role. You've been closing more deals. Is there anything that you're looking to change?
Well, the first thing that I know for sure is that I've definitely been dropping the ball with marketing. And I've been experimenting with some stuff, like paid sponsorships, like influencer advertising.
Yeah.
Which we'll have to wait and see how some of those play out. The prices between, different companies and people who do this just vary wildly.
What is that?
I mean by like thousands of percent.
Thousands of percent.
Yeah, like
what's the cheapest and what's the most expensive you've seen?
$20 to $10,000.
Okay, and that's for like one post.
Yeah, and that like the spread between like the follower count and the exposure between those two numbers is like much tighter than you would think it would be for the price difference.
But do they have equal engagement? Because you can have a page that has like 10,000, but they get insane engagement. You can have a 100,000 page that has the same amount of engagement.
Yeah. And the reason I started pushing this was because, we had a reel get 800,000 views now. And I saw so much lead generation from that. I was like, how can I make this repeatable, even if it, is a marketing cost?
Yeah,
as we see, meta ads become less and less effective.
Yeah.
But, I just haven't posted myself very often. And I know, like, weirdly enough, Instagram and to some extent LinkedIn are really big lead generators for us.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't posted a newsletter for a month and a half or so. But on the other end of things, I've just been really just pushing all of our old sales leads, and having kind of dived into the HubSpot and the various things we can look at. I generally just have this feeling that we were kind of going after old dead leads at a slow pace, and I've really flipped the script on let's get one meeting, let's turn it into a quote with a pay now button. I basically just prioritize like compressing serious potential customer, like compressing that timeline from interested to close sale to be as tight as possible, and that has 2.5x our close rate.
I know. I've definitely been one of those where I've spent way too much energy trying to close a deal that's just never going to close. Like, you're better off just to move on, put them in the drop campaign, and go find somebody else.
Mm-hmm. But I've seen a lot in our old sales cycle where we had a customer that seemed like they were all in, and then for whatever reason they just dropped out of nowhere. And obviously I don't want to just exploit people's impulsiveness and excitement. But at the same time, I believe that the product will ROI for them more than the alternatives. So if we close the sale and get the stuff on to the machine, then the customer's going to be happy once it's all done.
I think products make a lot of sense for fast closure rates. Like, strike when the iron's hot, when there's high energy around it, engagement. They're going to be able to sell it internally the best. Now, when it comes to selling machines or custom, I like longer sales cycles of 6+ months, because usually when they're shorter than that, that means one party made a mistake, if not both, on the statement of work.
Yeah. And I guess like with those sales calls, I'm specifically talking about these $20,000 to $30,000 lower level turnkeys we do.
Yep.
Because like we do enough of them that it's like, oh, the part is doable. It's a 2-op part or 3-op part. We have the process dialed down. We can churn out 4 of these a month in addition to everything else. And then there's $15,000 of product that's kind of baked into the package. So the workflows are all there, and we're assuming that we can get the meetings and everything done fast enough. We're closing some of those deals in literally 2 days. Which looking at our average close rate for those deals before I made these changes, we're in the weeks, and there's a much bigger drop-off rate.
Interesting. Okay.
But also, I'm just taking a lot more sales calls, I noticed, than what we were seeing on our scorecard before I stepped into the spot.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious to see, because this has been week 2 now of this.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how this trends as you kind of get through some of these ones that might have been just kind of stuck in the funnel, and see what this looks like in the next 30 to 90 days.
Well, a lot of them are new leads is the crazy part.
They're all new. Okay. I thought
not all of them, about half. About half. And that's actually one of the big changes is, I talked to you, and if you still have time, I want to talk to you about, HubSpot and drip campaigns.
Yeah.
But I haven't even really done any of that yet. These are all just, in a timely manner, strictly inbound, no cold calling or anything. Just getting meetings with clients,
Wow.
Going through, we have a kind of 30-minute pitch deck we go through every single time.
Really? You go through that long of a pitch deck every time?
Yeah, there's a little link on our Calendly on our website, and it's like book a 30-minute discovery call.
And you go through a pitch deck that takes 30 minutes?
So the deck you can get through it in 15 minutes, or even 10. The point really is to talk to the customer, figure out what kind of parts they run, figure out what kind of shop they are. And a lot of the time we'll have someone who, they think they just want an auto vise, and, maybe they were planning to buy, a robo job or a halter or something. And we convince them, no, like, buy a gripper. Let's get you a system that's going to work and make this production part, be, 20% of the all-in cost. And a lot of the time we're able to steer what was a small lead into, a 7x upsell.
Could you do that as rather than show them that slide deck during it, ask them the questions in 5 to 10 minutes, and then send them a Loom video that's specific to what you talked about?
Yeah, so my CPA actually did that, because I had some questions literally yesterday, and she just sent a Loom video with our QuickBooks open, answering the questions. I think I need to start doing that, especially when I for whatever reason the client's too busy, or we've talked about getting a meeting and haven't got there. But for the most part, a lot of what I do, I try to put these things into conversations,
Okay.
and see if I can steer the customer into a box and a workflow we've already built.
Okay.
And then whenever it goes to these more custom ones, they turn into, a bajillion emails, 3 or 4 meetings, a scope of work document.
So you're better off just to have the long call.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
it depends. I think the way that we've built the system, like I have on our website and our YouTube channel, going through that whole deck, just as a recorded Loom video, so you can just watch it. So you don't have to go do the discovery call. I think we kind of have customers who are self-selecting into that, who are probably looking for something more custom and looking for other options other than, buy a vise and a gripper and go.
Okay.
I don't know. So far it's working really well, and it doesn't seem to be a waste of time.
Yeah. I mean, your
Yeah.
sales cycle. I just like to ask the questions to see if there's opportunities, because I know time's a premium for you.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But I am shocked just like how high our close rate has gotten over the last couple of weeks.
The close rate tends to be higher with extremely good engagement like that, high energy.
Yeah.
I've
that's
seen that.
definitely true.
Like I've seen my closure rate kind of go up and down depending upon like how high energy or how engaged I'm able to be with leads at times, because there's just times where you're needed in other parts of the business, which is kind of that blessing and curse of being the salesperson though too. It kind of comes to the point, all right, yeah, when do you have somebody taking over more of this?
Yeah, and I told myself, hey, I'm just gonna take over this, see what we can do, and go from there. And now there's kind of an operational issue of, we're starting to quote at like 16 weeks. And the question is like, well, on a simpler 2-op automation job or something that's not just hardware, we're starting to get to the point where I think we can start creating friction on customers' willingness to buy, just because the lead time is so long.
Have you seen anybody drop out, like say, no, I'm not buying because it's too long?
Yeah, we have.
Okay. What percent?
Yeah. In the past 2 weeks, our close rate's like 80%. And
that sounds like too high of a close rate.
Yeah, and that's a whole other thing, is like our price is just not high enough, or is there something else there? I mean, obviously I've been working the good leads, and most of the leads that have been coming in on inbound, but you're right, it probably sounds like too high of a close rate.
Yeah, that seems, I think you're leaving something on the table there if you're closing 80% your lead time 16 weeks.
But there's also the conversation of like, what am I calling a lead, right?
Okay.
And that's someone who's gone on a call, who's been like, yeah, we want a proposal, and they get an actual, HubSpot RFQ with a pay now button on.
Yeah, that's the way I classify a lead, is one that gets a proposal. Like there's leads, and then there's whatever bid leads, if you will. And I classify closure rate percentages based on what goes as bid. Yeah. Otherwise, it's so tough, because you talk to so many. I mean, we just talked to a couple hundred people at a trade show. If you count everybody you scan as a legit lead,
you got a 2%,
yeah,
0.5% close rate.
It's really skewed. I think you need to look at your percentages in the portions of the funnel, and you're talking about bottom of funnel at that point, closure rate.
Yeah, if I considered everyone on the website, a lead, we'd have a 0.5% close rate.
Yeah.
Any other sales and marketing stuff on your end?
Nothing too crazy. It was really the ProMat show, executed it. The guys are probably packing up as we speak and heading home here soon. So we shall see what that entails. Excited to see what happened today. Yesterday got really slow in the afternoon, so I'm hoping today wasn't as dead as yesterday afternoon.
That's like the last day of every show. How long is ProMat? Is it like a 5-day?
It's a 4-day show, or 4.5, whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, I remember the last day of IMTS was like totally barren, where there were some students coming through with the little, green lanyards, but I think we had like 2 good leads come out of it.
What's interesting is I've had last couple minutes of a show be like some of our best leads.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if like executives just know that that's when the place is dead and they can just cruise through. Because I've had some just insane leads in that last like 15, 20 minutes.
Huh. Good to know.
Yeah. Like
we've always closed them down. Yeah.
Yeah. I refuse to pack up early. Like when all the other booths are packing up, we're staying up. Like
Yeah.
with the backdrop still in place. So
Yeah, those are the booths where there's no, management or owner that's present at the show anymore.
true,
Yeah.
very true. Um, I guess number 3, engineering and R&D.
I'm gonna say not much, but then I'm gonna think of something.
Okay. Well, I can
Um,
start on this one if you want me to. Then, what do you think?
yeah, go for it.
So we had the MRS at the show. We had lots of good feedback on the HMI, which was our, like, let's call it the last rev. We kind of go, or last major rev. At this point, all it is minor changes for usability that's happening to that HMI. Had some really good feedback on that, where we gave away honey at Pack Expo. We decided to not put an end effector on the MRS, so no end of arm tooling on it. Just spinning around. It's a stupid simple demo, but then focused on the HMI. So getting people to play with the HMI, and the fact that you can redeploy the MRS so quickly was just like eye opening to people. Are like, wait, I can put this at the end of a conveyor one day, and then like the next day in a couple minutes, I can have it reprogrammed and calibrated to run a different box. Like, I know there's a couple other companies that are doing this out there, but that seemed to be really huge for a lot of people. And then seeing where the ecosystem can go is where we're continuing to do that, because we've got the case erection and the label application into the point where all we have to do is industrial design and button those up, and those could go into the MRS ecosystem. So that's kind of what we're doing, is looking at how we get those 2 last aspects of the MRS buttoned up and ready for website, which will still probably be 6 months out, but I know I keep saying this.
Yeah. It's good to move slower. I mean, we're finally in the spot to be slowing down on R&D a little bit, which feels nice.
Yeah, R&D just it takes a lot of energy out of the team. It takes a lot of capital to do it fast. And so that's where, like, if we can leverage it when we're building other machines, like, we need to build these things anyways. So if we build them into the timeline of the machine, it takes us longer, but it's far more efficient and develops cash utilization.
Yeah. If you can get your customers to, in essence, slowly pay for the R&D, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we're still chugging along a little bit slower, if you will, on it. But that's about it. Nothing too crazy on R&D. We got that Nut Runner project appears to be running. I think we're just waiting on fixtures for the other SKUs to button up that software. And so customer's supposed to be here, I believe, April 2nd is the goal. So
cool. Yeah. I guess thinking through what we've done, I think I mentioned the intra-grip a little bit. Did I mention the intra-grip on the last pod?
Yeah, you did a little bit.
Yeah, so, the idea is you have a pallet with a cleat on the side. It goes into a 3-axis machine. This thing, just like a gripper, gets tool changed with a spindle, and then you can load parts or pallets, which is primarily geared towards like a 5th-axis application, right?
Okay, yeah.
So we've been working on building out the macros, because we build out kind of software macro templates that load onto the machines, as G-code, and then run all the math on the control. And we've been working on building out those macros to work effectively, and mostly, associated with one turnkey, where we're doing something a little weird. We're, machining the first pallet on the table on a 0 point, picking it up, turning it 90 degrees, putting it onto another 0 point, machining on the 4th. Typically, this is a 5th-axis application. So there's that with the intra grip. And the R&D slowed down a little bit because our senior engineer is out this week because his baby boy was born. So
oh, nice.
So you guys can celebrate birthdays together if you're ever in the same.
Yeah. He will definitely be a little bit slower now for the couple of weeks here.
Oh yeah, for sure. So he took the whole week off. And we got the extra load that's kind of chugging along. So we were waiting on parts there, some longer linear rails and some little beefier motors, but for the full pallet system. But that one, that's probably gonna, at a bare minimum, for the very first rev that's like not even done, gonna drag out to the end of April.
Okay. I mean, it's still only a month. Like,
yeah.
that's not bad for product development.
Yeah. And probably the thing on my mind the most is we have these intra loads now that we have to install. We just actually closed another deal, this one in Orange County, which we agreed to accelerate, even though our timelines are going out there longer and longer, because it's nice to have one local where if there are literally any problems whatsoever, we can drive out, fix it, It lets us get much more comprehensive measurements of the machine. So I'm excited about that, but there's a couple design tweaks of just sheet metal changes, a little bit better chip management, and we want to swap the stepper motor that does the door to a proper servo so it's not so dang loud.
Okay.
Just those little things, given the timeline, are stressing me out, and I know are going to be what's on the R&D time horizon over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because you'll be slowed down on R&D whether you like it or not, because one team member or your lead engineer now is out, which I think is probably good with you needing to step into the sales and keep you focused in that, because that's definitely going to help you drive some growth here.
Yeah, and I have noticed too, it's pulling me away from R&D has made me. It's created less disruption for the team, right? Because it's not some new part, right? Instead we're able to pull the Kanban cards, make the components or order the components as they get consumed. There's pre-existing G code, CAM, SOPs for making the parts at this point. So, our actual internal flow is a lot smoother without that R&D happening.
It's interesting how as you grow, you can become your company's own worst enemy. But
yeah,
it's the truth. Like, I've been there too. Like, it's interesting how that works. It's like, oh man, we used to be able to do this like this. Why can't we still do this? And it's like, because we're bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, because you actually have a consistent amount of work that you have to service, that all these pre-existing commitments.
Exactly. So
your spindle is running.
Yeah, that's exactly part of it.
Yeah.
Any company-wide updates and improvements?
Well, we moved to that sticky note board.
Oh yeah.
Since I kind of drew the line in the sand, said everyone has to be here at a certain time, people have been showing up on time, which has been very refreshing. I think I am realizing that we're gonna probably struggle a little bit to get everything out the door, and it's gonna definitely take some overtime and some hard work and alignment of the team. So now I'm assuming that the sales are prolonged and can be somewhat sustainable. First off, I need to probably step back and stop pushing so hard. Given that we have time and our lead times are already far enough out and there's more than enough money coming in the door. But I'm definitely looking at okay, we're probably understaffed if this is remotely sustainable. So that's something I'm starting to think about.
Yeah, I'd try automating more. If you're that far out, try automating more of the sales cycle, kind of like we were talking about a little bit before. If you don't need to close the deals, this is the time to test and see if you can close them with less of your energy. Like if you lose some, it's not a big impact to your revenue.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because we have meetings that are kind of built out there. Oh, Fixer has been a huge deal. In terms of
that's working.
Definitely speeding up the workflow. Just giving us a recorded transcript of all of our Google Meets has been a huge deal. So there's little things, but our CRM is not optimized. There's probably more we could do in the sales process, and other stuff, like I could record an updated video now that we have the intro load and the line load is kind of our main flagship products, so that we could convert get a lot of customers closer to the finish line without making them book a meeting, go through the call, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, can you get them without even booking a call?
Yeah, maybe.
Like
that's the
maybe you increase your prices and you just start doing, I realize you spec your parts and stuff like that and give them upgrades. Maybe there's ways to just bake your upgraded prices and you just design that fixturing as part of it. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, but maybe there's a way to just pass that cost right on to it. There's going to be some that are going to be crazy winners, and some of them are like, this was underbid, but I didn't have to talk to them until it was closed. So I guess it's a win.
Yeah. That's definitely true. I mean, a lot of that we've achieved on the product side by just putting all the spec sheets, putting step files, CAD models there, and just putting a buy it now button, even if it's an $8,000 product.
Okay. And you're getting people to buy $8,000 products with a buy it now button?
Occasionally. Usually what happens is
occasionally is better than never.
More often than not, that's happened a couple times. But more often than not, that same customer who's just going to buy will call, will talk for 5 minutes rather than, going through, the e-commerce store. It's like, okay, we'll send them a HubSpot quote with the exact same number on it and then pay through that portal.
I've seen that.
I don't know how that makes a difference, but
It is interesting. It's like people just want to make sure you're real. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
and that loops back, man, to that phone call thing that I'm still, even in 2 weeks of just picking up the damn phones, and not having that stupid, phone call that was, or system that was set up just completely incorrectly by our old sales guy. All of those, a fair number of those calls have turned into meetings which have already closed as sales. Um, so I think just having like the actual inbound managed properly has made a big deal too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
What
For
what about you?
we got that racking up.
Yeah.
We've got more vertical storage. And then I don't know if I've brought it up. We still had like some of these legacies the wrong way, but like projects that have just been lingering, like little details and stuff that were bid projects, and we just had little details to close out. Those are all closed out from last year, finally, at the end of this coming week. And so it's like there's no more like liability projects, if you will, on the books, which is really nice once we ship this final details this week. So that's kind of
Yeah, we,
nice
we
feeling.
churned a lot of those earlier this year, and these, I think legacy projects, if it's the same thing I'm thinking of, probably is the right word. Where you're like, man, we're not making money on this. It's not our ideal customer anymore, and but we have to do it, and we made a commitment, right?
Yeah,
Probably,
they were bid projects where we had milestones completed, but there was like, all right, the customer signed off, paid the invoice, but they're like, hey, can you still get these like couple things done? And we agreed to it, but there was
yeah,
never really any hard timeline to it.
yeah, those ones.
And so it was like, we have to get these done because they're gonna ask for them. So it's just like, let's get all these things checked off so we're cleaned out, or like just little details of we had that ECO come through that all got signed off. We're re-kicking off projects on that. And it's like everything we're doing now is revenue generating or profitable. And it's like, all right, this is a good feeling to be in.
Yeah. We finished like two or three of those kind of slow moving. Customer doesn't just wants a good result, but they don't really care how long it takes. And then you'll get busy. You put that at the bottom of the priority list. It's great that the customer is so willing to work with you, but it can turn into, for us, some of these took so long that the business was in a very different place at that point, and the it wasn't our like ideal fit anymore. So we churned through a couple of those. We still have one that I really need to make a priority to get through and just kind of eat the loss on and finish it out.
Yeah. It's nice just having it not hanging over you.
And we're down to one time and materials customer that is awesome, and we're going to keep them as long as the projects keep going. But the rest were have been long gone, and we have the one lingering project that all my staff will know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, none of these were T&M. They were all like large bid projects, and it was, hey, we want these spare parts made, or we want this documentation done a little bit different. It's like, yeah, we can do that. Just if you're willing to sign today and make sure that we crush this milestone off or check it off and say that we've done, because we've definitely finished these milestones.
And therein is the tension between sales and operations, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully we have a team that's so like, it's not a tension between the sales and the operations. It's how do we grow together, because both sides of the line are, let's say, learning, as you will,
Yeah.
as we're growing. So it's like, all right, was it an operation challenge? Was it a sales challenge? No, it was a team problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, racking and closing out those projects, nothing too crazy, but having more floor space is very nice.
Yeah, make sure you get it anchored correctly, and
Yeah,
sure.
we've got all the shelves bolted in, so if you hit them with a forklift, you don't knock it over, or like pick a shelf from above.
Tear the whole concrete out of the ground and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I guess next is, what have you been Googling?
I guess I have been putting in on some of these deals I think have been more likely to close. Part of the reason I think our close rate may have been too high is that, maybe I'm putting in too much time and effort into some of these. I'll do an hour of prep before a 30-minute call, and and they're closing, but there's also the question of how much that might affect operations in that part of the business, because to some extent I also have a job to do there. So been Googling clients, figuring out what machines, and
Are
a
you
little bit of the business details of leads.
are you documenting that SOP so now once you hire another salesperson, they know what to do?
No. Yeah, and that's probably a valid criticism.
That might be a solid thing to do
Yeah.
is follow up on less sales and actually get that documented. And I mean, even if you have like one of your engineers come in or somebody else from operations come in and test it, like I have our engineering department come in all the time and on our sales or help with that. It actually helps improve our processes a lot. And then there's more buy-in because they see the pains that you have on the sales side. And then you understand the pains that they have that's broken on the sales. And that's what we've really seen is getting this synergy between the two departments is having it go both ways, is having
Yeah.
engineers come in and do a couple of sales.
Yeah, and now that you say that as well, I think I need to put some time into really mapping out like what is the best way for us to sell our products and services. Um, you know, I don't know if maybe the reason we've struggled before is, with like commission-based sales is because, we're recruiting kind of salesy salespeople when maybe we need to be going more after apps engineers.
I
And
think
then
so.
yeah, but there's still the tension, right, between you kind of want halfway between. You want someone who understands the technicals or the technicalities in the products, but also someone who, will has the enthusiasm and the excitement, like you mentioned, and also likes money enough that kind of the pull of the coin on a commission of every deal leads to things like figuring out how to minimize the friction, or
Yeah.
even if you might lose a deal, find something else that's lesser cost that can get the client some benefit, still try to close something, and just keep the cadence up. I think that's the real problem that we've kind of had as a sales department. Even now that sales department is comprised of Michael.
Yeah.
The keeping that cadence up is what I've been worried about with kind of putting an apps engineer in that role.
Yeah. Selling custom machines or contract engineering can be very demoralizing at times because it's like
Yeah.
you can just get beat up and hit no after no after no after no. And it's like, if you can't take that, like when we're at the trade show, it's like, you'll talk to people and they'll just look straight at you and turn their head away. And it's like, okay, next.
Yeah,
Like,
that's just how trade shows go.
but it's like,
Um,
if you can't let that roll off your back, it's going to be really tough in sales.
yeah.
But for me, have you done anything with Zapier? I've been Googling that a little bit and I've been trying to
Yeah.
figure out if there's ways that like, I'll give an example pain that I have is team members place a PO that has to go into QuickBooks and that then needs to create a PDF PO that then gets emailed back to them. They typically put all the information in an email that's very easy
Mm-hmm.
for me to then drop into QuickBooks, crank this out, takes me a couple minutes, but it's like, this has to be automatable. Like, why am I doing this? It's the same button clicks. It's the same, like, it's the same process.
So we use Zapier a little bit, like to integrate calendars and stuff a long time ago. I mean, to go off that question, are you guys on accrual accounting? Is that why
Uh,
you're going through that process, or is that just how your SOP is built?
that's just how our SOP is built.
Okay. Um, I was just wondering if you got, looking forward on net 30, already accounting for the, yeah.
Yeah, I do a blend, like, depending upon who I'm reporting to. Like, if the bank's looking at it, they're wanting to sometimes see both. If Merlin's wanting to see it, they're wanting to see all of our accrual because what do you have on the like? What is
Right.
your invoiced work? What's your on the books quoted work? What's your what's your flow is what they want to see of all dollars in the business, and then some of it's just all right. What's just the cash on cash?
Yeah.
So it's a toggled button in QuickBooks as long as you track all your accounting accordingly. You can flip a switch and see both.
Well, I can't speak much to Zapier, but I guess one place that I look at a process like that, you have the kind of option, the lean options of what you can do. What we have done with POs has been mostly to try to eliminate and go to, the like email POs, and the on the
Yeah,
sales
the
order or
verbal
whatever.
POs. Yeah, we ran into a lot of
Yeah.
problems with that.
Oh, yeah, there you
We're
go.
like, all right, thought this was sent to accounting or who was responsible for paying for that. Oh, I thought the engineer that placed it was going to be doing it. And then accounting's going, oh, I didn't know I had to pay that. And it's like, well, either way, they didn't get paid, let's get it paid now, and then change our process. So we strictly went to a PO. Because then the other thing we were seeing is we weren't receiving parts and then they'd get paid for it. It's like, we don't pay for stuff if it doesn't show up.
Right.
So it's like we had to build an SOP where it was like, all right, we received the parts, pay the invoice, and move forward. And so now we have an open PO book of stuff we haven't received, or received one that then gets paid on next days. So it's just, when you build a machine, I mean, 10,000 parts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of POs.
Yeah. And there's also questions of like how much do you, and we've dealt with this too, how much do you try to assign, like, okay, you have 16 quarter 20 bolts that are this style that are used in this machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, do we just put them on the shelf and can consider that part of our overhead?
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
That stuff's easy. We do that. And then if we can buy it on the credit card without a fee, it goes on the credit card.
Yeah.
Like if they don't charge us a processing fee, that's our SOP there. It's just put it on the credit card, then there's no POs. If there's a fee to do that, or they're giving us terms based on, delivery, stuff like that, and it's going through PO, then it has to go that way. But yeah, that's
kind of random other question of, do you guys, with your lower value stuff, like, say you have like I don't know, the MRS is what, like $75,000?
We're selling those for right around 150 to 200.
Okay, so way off base. So this question's going to be
the robot's more than $75,000.
Yeah, okay. One thing we're starting to see is like more and more large transactions on credit card. And like, we don't charge a credit card fee on it. We do on our like T&M account that's still left, but where's the line for you? Would you sell an MRS on a credit card if someone wants to pull up? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll sell.
Would you charge them the 3%?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
Yeah, I might split it with them. Like if they're willing to pay credit card all up front, like if you pay all up front on a credit card, I'll give you a 1.5 processing fee or something like that. I've never had the request, but yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I remember like my dad always used to do that. He'd buy agriculture equipment on a credit card, and it's like, people want their points. All right, let's just split them, and then you just pay everything up front.
I mean, my philosophy on it though has just been like, we just raise the prices 3%.
Yeah, or you can do it that way too.
And then you let people pay on the credit card. There's zero. It's like, to me, it's always felt a little bit like those menu hidden fees, and it's like somehow you pay an extra 6% on a restaurant.
That's probably the right way. Just bake it in, and then I guess, do you give a discount to the people that pay cash?
No. So no one literally pays cash, but pay wire ACH.
Yeah.
So for us, we just are like, okay, we'll put the base pricing there, and we have marginally better margins when someone pays upfront or wire ACH or whatever.
Yeah, makes sense.
Sorry, that was a random tangent, but I was just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. That's definitely, I hope it starts pivoting that way now that we're getting more and more interest in the MRS, because it's an actual deployable product now after this last rev that we took to ProMat. It was a good product at PAC, but it wasn't done in complete transparency. It's done now.
Yeah. Have you moved any of them yet, or is it like kind of out of alpha testing? Yeah.
We have one that I believe is going to deploy here. We're waiting on approval from his executive team. Yeah, so now it's just all alpha testing on our floor, doing demos, stuff like that. But
yeah.
Well, I think changing
the first one's the most exciting.
Yeah, and changing the robot was a huge thing. So we were running the Dobot on there because it was cost effective. I mean, it was literally $25,000 cheaper robot than Fanuc, and we thought that it's like, all right, that's a big cost savings. This is going to help us move more of these compared to our competition. And everybody's like, who the hell is this? Where's that robot from? Huh? Why is it not a Fanuc? Was like the common questions we got. And now we had a Fanuc at this show, and it was like, oh my gosh, the level of engagement of like, yeah, we can use this. Like, it wasn't a question of what's that robot on there. It's how do we get this, basically.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's one thing I've definitely come around on, of like, sell people what they want. You get the same objection too many times, and you realize they'll just pay more, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense, even if the cheaper thing did exactly what the customer needed, what the customer thinks they need, as long as it does what they actually need and also aligns with the perception of what they think they need, that's when sales is easy.
Keyword there is perception. I had boss when I was at Vortex, that was a line he'd always say is perception is reality in sales. I don't care what we want to make in engineering. If the customer doesn't perceive it how they want it, we can't sell it. Like that line always stuck with me.
Yeah, but engineering also has to make reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, yeah.
Yep.
But, we saw that with like the door on the intro load. Before the door, it was just impossible to close a sale. And, we put the door, even though it worked fine without it. And now, objection brought up, question answered, and, move on.
Perfect. All right. Last is something personal. You want to go first or me?
You can go first.
All right. So I've been getting common questions about, I actually got at the trade show just yesterday, people wanting to know more of the backstory of Develop. And then we did the Q&A on our Instagram, got the same questions there of people saying, hey, how'd you get this started? What were your first customers like? How did that kind of go? And then it's interesting, all within the same week, I then got invited on to a small business development center in Madison, Wisconsin, to kind of give a presentation on what it's like starting a business and what that kind of grind, if you will, is like. And so I don't know, it's kind of longer than a 5-minute or a couple minute at the end of a podcast, but it'd be kind of an interesting Q&A to cover sometime as an outline, or different than our 1 through 6 was kind of something I was going through, because it's like, some of the things I think back on is it's like, I gave so much stuff away for free. Like I can think back of like, there was a time where like there's this agriculture drone. I designed in SolidWorks like this entire prop guard system for them. So they kept crashing these things because they were hitting trees. They ended up making all this stuff out of carbon fiber, and I designed the entire thing for free. Like it was like way back in the day, I was like, oh, I'm just having fun. But it's like a lot of those things that I did, I just didn't know how I was creating value. I was just having fun. And then all of a sudden I got all these referrals, and it kind of rolled from there. And it's just like thinking back on that. And then it's kind of, I was running that in parallel while working at Rings, and it kind of hit a convergence point where it was, all right, I either have to start turning down work that I'm actually getting paid really well to do, or I have to quit my job. It was kind of that convergent point. So it's just like, but there's so much more to that story that I think would be kind of fun. And I'm sure, you've shared some of yours on the pod here, but I think it'd be fun to hear more of that based on I've had now 3 requests just this week. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. No, we should definitely talk about it more. Maybe next pod.
Yeah.
Your story is probably a lot more repeatable. Mine was kind of a crazy ride, but somehow I ended up here.
Yeah, I would definitely say that mine is more standard or repeatable for people, and there's definitely things I would have done differently had I known. So
there are many things I would do differently.
Oh heck yeah! Like, but that's business. Like, you just got to keep going. So I don't know.
You got to be a cockroach in the downtimes and survive no matter what. And then,
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So that's my little something personal. I was just trying to figure out a way to share more of that, but maybe there's other Q&A. Maybe we do like once a month a Q&A. I don't know how
that'd be really cool. Yeah.
Those of you listeners out there, if you can reach out to Michael or myself, do we have our email addresses accessible somehow? Or maybe you just go on our sales at develop-llc.com. I manage
our
that
Instagrams,
right now. Yeah, or DM us on Instagram your questions. Yeah. I'd really like to start answering some of their directed questions towards us.
Yeah, we can do a little mail segment.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Cool. Yeah, we should definitely do that.
All right. So what else for you, Michael? Something personal of the week. You're snowboarding.
Snowboarding. The wedding's coming up quick, so I'm kind of doing all the last minute prep, my classic procrastination with my personal life.
Yeah.
So you just nailing down all the little details right now. And that's kind of where my head's at. Lots of business stuff. I need to spend some more personal time over the next week.
Yeah, it's a tough balance to find sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
So good thing you're snowboarding and finding some of that.
Thank you so much for listening to Matt and I's conversation this week on the Manufacturing Automation Podcast. If you like the podcast, please share it with a friend or give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll be back next week to continue sharing our respective journeys in life, business, and industrial automation. Thanks so much.